All right, we are going to take a look at the story called Dog Days. So, it's another narrative story. It's telling us a story about something. So, there are characters, there's a setting, there is a plot, and we are going to answer some questions about the story. So, let's start with our questions, which can be found on page 52. So, turn to page 52 and let's figure out what we're looking for. All right. Number 1, Nikki had been taking karate classes for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or 1 month. So we are looking here about her karate classes, and we're looking for a number or a length of time. Number 2, Nikki's favorite part of karate was sparring, teaching the class, walking home, or the uniform. We're looking for the favorite part of karate. Number 3, an ambulance was parked in front of Nikki's building because her mother was sick, there had been an accident, someone was trapped in the elevator, or Mrs. Carter had been mugged. We're looking for the ambulance at Nikki's building. Why? Number 4, Miss Carter walked into the alley because she saw a dog that was crying, she heard a cat, someone called her name, or none of the above. So we know Miss Carter walked into an alley. We want to know why she walked into the alley. Number 5, when Nikki walked closer to the alley, she saw a gray rat, a limping dog, an old car, or a lot of trash. So we want to know what she saw in the alley. Number 6, the sentence warning bells rang in Nikki's head means she had been hit in the head, she sensed danger, she had a headache, or all of the above. So we're looking for this sentence in the text to discover its meaning. Number 7, when Nikki was attacked by the mugger, she ran, screamed, panicked, or fought back. So Nikki is going to be attacked. We want to know, what did she do? Number 8, Nikki realized that the mugger used the dog as bait to get people into the alley, to help him get around, to scare people, or none of the above. So the mugger used the dog for what? Why did he use the dog? Nikki followed the dog to the police station, the mugger's apartment building, a store where they sold dog food, or a dark parking lot. So, followed the dog to where? And then number 10, at the end of the story, Nikki has told the police where the mugger lives. The mugger is arrested by the police. Nikki asks to take the dog home, or all of the above. So we're looking for the end of the story, the conclusion. Okay, now that we have all the questions kind of laid out for us, we are going to go ahead and read the story. So go ahead and get to your first page of Dog Days, where section 1, we find out why an ambulance is in front of Nikki's apartment. Okay, here we go. Nikki jumped back. A foot flew by inches from her knee. She blocked 2 jabs aimed at her stomach. Then she lunged forward. She aimed at her opponent's chest. The sound of her striking was as crisp as the sound of a fastball hitting a catcher's mitt. Nikki dropped down. She swept her opponent's legs out from under him. He fell to the floor. The match was over. Nikki had won. So this would be a spar at her class. A spar is another word for a match in karate. It was dark when Nikki walked home from the dojo. She had thought about how much she loved karate. She had been taking karate lessons for 10 years. Nikki went to her first karate lesson on her 5th birthday. That was when her father took her to the dojo for the first time. He said to her, "This is a present you will be able to use for the rest of your life." All right, in this paragraph, we have quite a few numbers. We have 10 years. We have her 5th birthday. We have that she went to the dojo for the first time. Here's some important numbers. Dad was right. Nikki loved karate lessons. And because she had worked so hard, she had earned her black belt. Sometimes she even taught classes for her teacher. Nikki was proud of this. It made her love karate even more. But the thing she most enjoyed was the sparring. It felt good to go up against a bigger, stronger fighter and win the match. So a lot of important information here about karate. She has her black belt. That is the highest degree belt you can get in karate. So she is awesome at it. We're going to star that to show that she's a star. She sometimes taught classes for her teacher. She enjoyed sparring the most. And that's why, because she liked going up against a bigger, stronger fighter and winning. Nikki was almost home now. She turned the corner to walk the last block to her family's apartment. She stopped. Something was wrong. She saw blue and red lights bouncing off the building. The lights made the bare winter trees cast spidery shadows on the street. 2 police cars and an ambulance were parked in the street and in the alley next to the building. So those blue and red lights equal police cars and ambulance. Nikki began running. "Please don't let it be my mom or dad," she gasped as she ran. When she reached the building, a stretcher was being loaded into the ambulance. It was Mrs. Carter. There was a bandage on her head. Her arm was in a sling. "What happened?" Nikki asked a police officer as she walked by. So Miss Carter is in the stretcher. So I'm going to highlight Miss Carter is in the stretcher. And then let's also highlight her injuries. She has an injury with her head and an injury with her arm. The police officer stopped. He said, "That lady was hurt in the alley. Someone hit her over the head and knocked her out. Then the person took her purse and ran off." So if somebody injures somebody and then steals your stuff, that is called a mugging. So this person hit her and then took her purse. "Is she going to be all right?" Nikki asked in a low voice. The officer replied, "We think so. The medics think she should be okay in a few days." So that's good news. Nikki looked around the corner that had formed. She asked, "Did anyone see the mugger?" The officer shook his head and said no, Mrs. Carter didn't see him. He hit her from behind. The only thing she saw was a dog. The only thing she saw was a dog. This person came up from behind. "A dog," Nikki said, surprised. "What does a dog have to do with this?" The police officer shook his head. "I don't know. But Mrs. Carter said she walked into the alley because she saw a dog. It was a big brown mutt lying on its side. It whimpered and looked like it was hurt. She walked into the alley to help it. That was when she got hit over the head. The strange thing is that when we got here, the dog was gone. If it was hurt, why wasn't it still in the alley?" So here's the crime. Let's highlight the details of the crime. There was a dog, or a mutt in this case, whimpering. People thought it was hurt. So she walked to help it, and that was when she got hit over the head. And when they got there, the dog was gone. Important details. Nikki thought The sounds of the mugging woke it up, and it ran off. But Mrs. Carter had said it was whimpering and hurt. Where did it go? For some reason, Nikki couldn't get the dog off her mind. All right, so that's all of section 1. In section 2, we're going to find out what happens when Nikki sees the dog in the alley. But before we do that, let's go back to the beginning of section 1. Based off of what we just learned in our reading, we should be able to answer a few questions. Section 1, you can answer questions number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and that might be it. Yep, that would be it. So numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 can all be found here in section 1. Let's continue reading. Section 2, to find out what happens when Nikki sees the dog in the alley. A week after Mrs. Carter was mugged, Nikki was still thinking about the dog. She walked home from karate class. It was cold and dark on the empty street. Nikki jammed her hands into her coat pockets. I wonder how that poor dog stays warm at night, she thought to herself. Then she heard a whimper. So first off, it's been a week since these attacks. And then she heard the whimper. That whimper is the same thing Miss Carter heard on the night of her mugging. It came from an alley. Nikki slowed down to listen more carefully. She heard it again. A dog was crying as if it were hurt. Nikki walked closer to the alley. There it was. A sad-looking dog was limping away from her. Maybe a car had hit it. Nikki didn't think about the mugging and Mrs. Carter. She didn't think about the danger of walking into a dark alley at night. She only thought about helping the dog. So, similarities from what happened with Miss Carter. There's the dog crying like it's hurt. It's limping. And she didn't think about what had happened to Miss Carter. Instead, she only thought about helping the dog, which is exactly what Miss Carter was thinking that night, too. Nikki stepped into the alley. Come here, boy, she called in a soft voice. The dog looked back at her. He kept limping away. The dog went to the end of the alley. Then he started to walk without a limp. Key details. Warning bells rang in Nikki's head. This was something we highlighted. Something was wrong. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She felt her skin tingle as all of her senses became alert. She sensed a whisper of movement behind her. Nikki dropped into a crouch. She spun around with one leg out. At the same moment, a board sliced over her head. She felt it brush against her hair. Someone was attacking her. She knew exactly what she had to do. Her leg swept into the attacker's legs. Down he went. Nikki heard the board clatter on the ground. Here's the attempted crime again. Crime. The mugger jumped back on his feet. He was wearing a ski mask. He stepped toward Nikki and swung a fist at her head. Nikki ducked. She then kicked him in the shin. He howled and grabbed his leg. Through the mask, she could see the fear in his eyes. He turned and ran. So the mugger got away. So that's the end of section 2. Based off of what we just read in section 2, there are some more questions we can answer. We can now answer number 5. We can also answer number 6. Number 7. And that would be it. Section 2 can answer those 3 questions. Let's continue on to section 3 to find out how the dog is involved with the mugger. Nikki stood there stunned. Her heart was racing. She had been in many sparring matches, but this was her first real fight. Her training had paid off. She had protected herself. Suddenly she thought, he's going to get away. Nikki began to run, but then she stopped. The man had too much of a head start. She would never be able to catch him. And what if she did? He might have a knife or a gun. He had been surprised when she fought back. That had helped her. But now he would be prepared. I can't just let him get away, Nikki said to herself. He'll attack somebody else later on. So, important to remember, this is her first real fight. Sparring matches are not actual fights. They're just practice. Then she saw the brown dog walking back and forth at the end of the alley. It looked confused or lost, but it did not seem to be hurt. Suddenly, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Nikki knew why the dog had been in both alleys during the attack. She knew why the dog seemed hurt one minute and normal the next. The dog was being used as bait. That's important for us to know. That's how the dog is linked to the crimes. He must belong to the mugger, Nikki told herself. The dog has been trained to act hurt. When the mugger saw someone walking alone, he would hide in an alley. Then he would tell the dog to whimper and limp. When the person went up to the dog, the mugger would strike. So here's the plan. This is the mugger's plan. Why is the dog still here? Nikki wondered out loud. He didn't. The dog looked at her for a second and then trotted off. Nikki followed. The dog stayed in alleys. After 4 blocks, he walked up to a fence at the back of some old apartments. The dog slipped right through. Nikki walked up to the fence and looked closely. Part of the fence had been cut and put on hinges. Nikki darted through the fence. She ran to the side of the building. She peeked around the corner. Nikki saw a man limp up to the front door and go in. That's him, and that's all I need to know, she said to herself. So here's how she followed the dog. Later that evening, blue and red lights bounced off the old apartment building. Nikki watched the police walk the man to the patrol car. The police had found Mrs. Carter's credit cards in the man's apartment. They had also found rings, watches, and other things he had taken from other people. So, blue and red lights equal police. And then he had found credit cards, rings, watches, and many other items. Nikki watched as an officer put the gentle dog on a leash. "What's going to happen to the dog?" she asked. The officer said, "I guess we'll have to take him to the pound." Nikki looked at the dog. He put his cold nose on her hand. "Can I take him?" she asked. The officer replied, "I don't see why not, but why would you want a dog that was trained to do bad things?" Nikki smiled and said, "I don't think he's bad at heart. He's just been hanging around with the wrong crowd." So here we find out what happens to the dog. So that means for this section, section 3, we can answer the rest of the questions. We can answer number 8, number 9, and number 10. So go ahead and go to your Kiddom and finish these questions and submit your work so I can see how you did. Have a good day.